But even with diets, right? Like the minute someone messes up, we throw our hands up and say, we'll start tomorrow.
Yep. Might as well go hard tonight and start tomorrow. I don't know how many times I've done that, you know, like.
Damn, let's talk some shit.
It's Polly Siegel
and Victoria Aaron,
two licensed therapists who've spent way too much money on degrees, certifications, and trainings. We both love what we do and couldn't imagine working in any other profession. But we're forced to be serious all the time, and that gets boring. Shit Talking Shrinks discusses important mental health topics, the human experience, and society at large, while poking fun along the way. It won't be all fun and games because after every episode, you'll walk away with tangible tools to navigate life more effectively.
We love a tangible tool.
Hello, everyone. I'm really excited about our guest, Kelli Walker. So first and foremost, thank you for joining Shit Talking Shrinks. Unfortunately, we do not have Victoria here today, and we're going to give her shit about that because she has decided it is more important to go meet this man that she's jazzed about right now instead of joining us and talking about important shit. So there's that.
Values, right? You know, competing values. It's hard to juggle.
Yes, love or shit talking shrinks. I don't know which one's more valuable, but I think we'll go with love. So I'll miss her. We will miss her dearly in our talk today, but that's where she's at to all of our listeners. Kelli, introduce yourself. Tell all of us who you are and what you specialize in.
Yeah, I am Kelli Walker. I love Nutella, and that's about it. No, my name is Kelli Walker. I am a master's prepared nurse as well as a certified health and wellness coach, and I have my own nurse health coaching business. And so a lot of my experience as a nurse has been working in the community health setting. So a lot of disease prevention, health promotion, but also mental health, because I'm sure as many other listeners in many other places have experienced this too. We have a bit of an opiate epidemic here. So it's this really special community health center that specializes in medically assisted treatment for people trying to recover. So it's a little bit of everything, a little bit of physical health, mental health, and these days I've sort of switched gears to wearing more my coaching hat, just because my personal values when it comes to health are more proactive and preventative when so much of our current medical model is reactive, right? Reactive and treating. So, my little niche and, my little space in this world is that health promotion, and health prevention. So now I'm kind of wearing the hat more of a nurse coach. And, while I kind of work with everybody, whether they're feeling stuck, right, in chronic medical conditions or feeling stuck, in the busyness trap, my sort of specialty, just kind of based on my personal and professional experiences, working with people who are experiencing stress, anxiety, and burnout.
Yeah. Which is literally everyone.
Well, it's literally everyone. I feel like the studies I see say something like, 35 to 40% of people will report, that's just the reported cases of people experiencing anxiety. You know what I mean? At some point in their adult life, it's prevalent, it's pretty universal human emotion.
Yeah. I think if I were to meet someone who's like, oh no, I don't struggle with stress or anxiety, I would think that they were an alien that landed on Earth. They're more advanced in some way.
Yeah. Oh, it's like, okay, all right. Aliens do exist. You just proved that.
And on top of all the magical work that you do as a nurse and as a coach, you also have your own podcast.
Yes. Not another anxiety show. And it's pretty casual and conversational. I mean, informative too. But, we live in a sort of an epidemic of self-help, right? Like kind of the current industry almost makes self-help or wellness feel like, a third full-time job for some of us. We have our jobs, then there's some of us are parents or caregivers or whatever. And then, it's kind of accessible, I'd say, support and healing for people experiencing anxiety and burnout. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and also just, it's such a brilliant podcast name because there are so many like anxiety ones out there. And that's what caught my eye is like, not another one of those fucking anxiety podcasts.
Yeah, please, not another one. We laugh a lot, and not making light of, both my co-host and I have, been through pretty intense anxiety and panic attacks. And, so not making light of it, but just sort of, I don't know, connecting and, the listeners seem to kind of like that piece of it where we can make something that feels, so heavy, just a little lighter or, get a little altitude over it. Cause it's heavy shit.
It is heavy shit. Yeah. And today we're talking about neuroplasticity and habit change, which I think is multifaceted and such an interesting topic for a variety of reasons. But I think a lot of people don't understand the neuroscience between how we make changes in a sustainable way. Like we're all as humans looking to adapt something new or try something or take on a new habit or hobby or practice. Like we're geared as humans to always be striving for more and better, but we don't really understand the science behind neuroplasticity or how our brain actually helps us in habit forming. And so that's kind of what comes up for me initially when I think about this topic, but I'm curious, like your take on why it's important.
I think the beautiful thing about neuroplasticity is it's incredibly encouraging and hopeful when we feel stuck. And it's practical and it's accessible and it sounds really fancy, right? Neuroplasticity, like, oh God, do I have to read a whole textbook on that? And it's like, really, when you break it down, the whole idea is that, listen, our brain has this ability to change both physically, structurally, and functionally. It's a really beautiful thing. We, as humans, are adaptable. And, again, it sounds really fancy, but when it comes down to it, like our brain just learns through simple, consistent repetition. And I think a lot of us feel like when we're stuck, especially in anxiety or burnout, or where there's like a lot of struggle and a lot of suffering, it can feel like I'm going to have to move worlds to see change. And it's like, no, we don't have to spend all day working on this. It's sort of, I always like to use the example, like we didn't learn to drive or brush our teeth or learn a new language or a new skill by literally practicing it all the time. We just practiced it consistently. We dedicated some of our time, some of our, deliberate attention. And with that, it sounds really anticlimactic, but like with that, things slowly shift.
Right. It's when I'm thinking about repetition and having consistency in something that we want to change or something that we want to embrace, it makes me think back to in 2020, I ended up finding out that a lot of my stomach issues and my IBS was based on diet. And if I made a diet change, that it would really help my symptoms. And I remember hearing from the doctor that day, like, I want you to try to cut out gluten and dairy, which felt like a fucking death sentence at the time. I was like, what, you want me to do what?
Overwhelming, right? Like, it just feels like not only a death sentence, but like overwhelming. How am I going to do this? Like, it's so much.
Yeah. It was like, I truly felt like someone was like, I'm sorry, you've been sentenced to death row.
Your life is over.
And I remember thinking, there's no way in hell I'm going to be able to not consume gluten and dairy. And it wasn't because of weight or any of the vain things. It was like literally my digestive tract needed to reset, and this might be an opportunity for it to happen. So make a long story short, I'm thinking it's impossible. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be able to make this change. And then neuroplasticity happened where I didn't consume dairy and gluten, and I didn't do it for a week. And I'm like, oh, by not doing this, my brain is creating new neural pathways. And these new neural pathways are changing my relationship with food, or changing my relationship with these two categories of food that unfortunately I don't have access to anymore because it's hurting my health. And then another week went by and another week, and now it's 2023 and I still don't consume gluten or dairy because it helps me have more vitality and wellness. But that's the neuroplasticity. The more you keep doing something, the brain adjusts and it works and it gets used to it and it finds its homeostasis again.
Yeah, because we're experiential learners. So like, it's sort of like you said, when we have these experiences repeatedly, like, okay, cutting this out actually makes me feel better. When we have like an accumulation of those consistent, repetitious experiences, like really, it kind of just does the work for us. Our brain's like, yeah, no, I don't want to hurt myself again. And I've gotten used to this like new way of eating, right? Like we learn through experience. And it's like, I think about how, you know, a lot of my clients struggle with anxiety, right? And stress and burnout. And so often, because it's really hard, and this was me too, like my focus was on, okay, how do I get rid of anxiety? Like, this is too much. Like, how do I get rid of this? How do I stop this? How do I just not even have to experience this anymore? And I kind of didn't realize the principles of neuroplasticity were hurting me a little bit there, because by what we pay attention to, we just, you know, we innocently reinforce. Like neuroplasticity, it's neither good nor bad. It's neutral. It's just based on what we repeat, right? Like what we repeat, what we place our focused attention towards, like that is what gets reinforced. Those are the neural pathways that get strengthened. Those are the neural pathways that react faster. And so for me, I was really stuck in like, it's like that really traditional medical model, like, you know, treat the problem, solve the problem, get rid of the problem. And it wasn't until I sort of like let go of that really tight grip, like, how do I get rid of this? This is terrible, which again, makes sense. It was a lot of suffering. It was really limiting. It makes sense. We don't want that. But once I kind of loosened my grip a little and was like, okay, what do I want to bring in here? Like, what do I want to bring in to support me? It's similar to diet. Like if people are trying to change their ways of eating, it tends to be more successful instead of like, what am I going to get rid of? What am I going to stop? But what can I add? What can I bring in? And so for me, it was like slowly bringing in supports, right? Like whether it was just connecting with loved ones, physically slowing down, stopping TV like a half an hour earlier, all these just small little consistent changes. And, it, in my experience, just sort of focusing on what supported me, focusing on what sort of regulated my nervous system, naturally brought down the alarm level, like, from a consistent 7 out of 10 to a 4. And, there was a really interesting study about mindfulness-based stress reduction. And what it saw was kind of like my experience with it. It was interesting to see it in a study and numbers and whatnot. But what they noticed is, people that participated in this 8-week study saw an increase in gray matter in their hippocampus, right? So associated with memory, but also emotional regulation. And they saw a decrease in gray matter in the amygdala, like the area, right, that probably many of your listeners know, that's associated with fear and anxiety and all that, uncomfortable stuff we associate with the anxiety experience. And I always thought it was interesting because these participants, they didn't focus on eliminating anxiety. It was sort of some of that reactivity was just naturally pruned by honing in on a new skill, right? Kind of bringing some attention for a little piece of the day to a new skill, to a new ability.
Right. So, for any listeners that have wanted to change a particular behavior or adapt a new habit, we rely on neuroplasticity to be able to achieve that. I mean, evolutionarily, the brain has been made to change and adapt and evolve and transform. I mean, that's what's allowed us as humans to survive 500,000 years is because of neuroplasticity. So how would you, like if someone wants to make a behavioral or habit change, how can they maximize neuroplasticity to be successful in that?
Well, how often, right, do people kind of sign up for the gym on January 1st and then by, 2 weeks later, it's like, okay, the gym's, it's dead again. It's like super busy. It's super packed. So many of us try to go too big, too fast. It's anticlimactic. Really, change is small, consistent steps. I think there's like a Japanese practice that talks about just do it for a minute a day, because it's a foothold. It's a foothold where our experiential learning builds off of. So for anybody out there, I think it's all about like one, starting small, making it doable. A lot of us are tapped, and like self-care or growing or any of that stuff feels kind of like for the rich and famous and the privileged. Like a lot of us are tapped. We have a lot going on. And that's why starting small and starting simple is perfectly reasonable, right? We don't learn to brush our teeth by committing 8 hours a day to it. It's just because we do it every day for 2 minutes for however long when we're kids, and that muscle memory sticks. And it's the same with anything. And being kind and curious, like there's going to be, again, we're experiential learners. We're going to need to tweak it. We're going to need to make iterations. It's okay that the first go around, it's not perfect. It's not meant to be. Neuroplasticity is not based on perfection. It's just based on iterations and kind of deliberate awareness and repetition. And it's a process. It's a process. So we can tweak, we can switch it up, and keeping it simple. And when we inevitably, not if, when we inevitably like stray from our goal or the skill we're working on because we get tired and we fall into old habits, because old habits are,
they die hard.
They die hard, and it's like energetically efficient to like switch back into old habits, even if it doesn't serve us when we're taxed, right? Like, so when we fall back into old habits, it's sort of like expecting that, like that is actually part of the process, and we can still learn from that moment. Like I remember when I was caring for my mom, she had terminal lung cancer, and part of my sort of coping was like, as someone that had always eaten healthy, I would get like Chinese food like 3-4 times a week. It was just part of being a primary caregiver, like how I dealt with it. Like really.
Dude, you were living the dream. You were living the dream.
Yeah. And, and like eventually it was like, okay, I'm starting to feel kind of like sick and sluggish, and I'm uncomfortable in my body. And, it was a process. It didn't happen overnight, of experiential learning. Like, okay, how do I feel after a few days when I don't have it? And then when I did have 2 plates of it, it's like, how do I feel after? And it's like, oh man, I'm so stuffed that I'm not sleeping well. And then like I'm stressed out the next day. And it's not a failure. It's a learning opportunity. Because when we integrate that sort of experience, that knowledge, that learned experience, it's a little bit easier the next time to have some space to say, I don't know that I want to do that. Right.
Right. You know what I love that you said a few moments ago is that like neuroplasticity, or the habit changing process doesn't need perfection. You don't have to do it exactly the same way every single time in this regimented format. Like it happens just with some consistency. And I think so often our brains go to, well, if I fucked it up, oh, well, like it's all, down the toilet now. And it's like, no.
Not all or nothing. Yeah. It's so easy to feel discouraged, right? It's, yeah.
Or just like the classic, actually I just did an episode on anti-diet culture and how it's so harmful to humans. So I won't get too sidetracked here, but even with diets, right? Like the minute someone messes up, we throw our hands up and say, we'll start tomorrow.
Yep. Might as well go hard tonight and start tomorrow. I don't know how many times I've done that, like.
Totally. We've all done that, but really you didn't need to go so extreme. Your brain is structurally changing every time you make a different choice. And every time you do something that's opposite of what you normally would do, the brain registers it as potentially valuable, right? And it goes like, oh, wait a second, we've never done this before, but like, I'm open and curious. And then you do it again and again and again, and then the brain values it as, oh wow, this is valuable and we need to continue to implement this. And that's really all habit change is just reinforcing behaviors that serve you.
Exactly. And I like how you said the word curious, like it serves us really well, especially when we feel like we've messed up, right? Like whether it's with diet or with a new practice or skill or something at work, whatever. We're humans. We feel like we mess up. That happens, right? But if we feel like we've messed up and we can bring in, a little bit, sometimes it's like sarcastic curiosity for me because that's the best I can muster, but bringing in some of that curiosity, like, all right, I wish I maybe didn't make that choice, or I don't know if that choice serves me that well, but what can I take away from this? Like, what can I learn here? Like, what's the takeaway moving forward? And just that in and of itself is like an act of neuroplasticity, paying attention in a different way, with intention, with awareness. So it's, even when we quote unquote mess up, it's still really valuable for habit change.
Well, and also like, is it really considered messing up, or is it just being human?
Probably people couldn't hear my air quotes here, like mess up, like it's not, because you're right. It's not.
Our YouTube channel will see your air quotes.
Okay. They'll see my air quotes, my excessive air quotes.
But yeah, it's not even messing up. It's like this human inevitability of like, you're going to stray, you're going to feel an ebb and flow, and an ebb and flow and habit change is normal.
Just in everything else.
Right. You're right. Like everything else. It makes me think back to when I learned about mindfulness practice. So this was, oh gosh, this has to be like a decade ago. And I remember it was so daunting and it was so overwhelming to think about like, how am I going to incorporate mindfulness practice into my crazy busy schedule, as a student. And again, at that point, I was like a huge perfectionist. So everything had to be done perfectly. But at the time I was like, okay, I'm going to meditate in the morning. And I did that a few days and I could feel my brain start to shift. And maybe it wasn't a few days, perhaps it was a few weeks of doing it in the morning. And again, there were some mornings it didn't happen, but it was happening more mornings than not. We'll say maybe 3 to 4 times a week. And I remember that feeling of neuroplasticity where when I would wake up, my brain would go, hey, bitch, you want to do a meditation? And I remember that change and I was like, oh my God, that's the new neural pathway. The minute my brain suggested, how about a meditation? It was like, whoa.
This is what we do now. Yeah,
this is what we do now. And my brain wants it and craves it and finds it so yummy. And I think maybe that's a good way to like digest this concept of neuroplasticity is once your brain starts to recognize it as valuable and it starts to encourage it in implicit or even explicit ways, that's it. It's done.
It's done. And it feels at that point, I mean, that's what a habit is, right? Effortless, sort of automated. And, it can feel like such a struggle at first. I remember for me, same thing, meditation. And I think when I was struggling with anxiety and panic attacks, it was so intense and like kind of connecting to my body was really difficult. But a lot of healthcare providers were like, you need to meditate. And it wasn't sort of until I shifted from, I need to do this to be okay, to let's just see what happens if I do. I think I started with like 3 to 5 minutes. I'm like, let me try this for 2 weeks. I can do 3 to 5 minutes in the afternoon, like when my body's just like a little bit more grounded and a little more naturally calm. That was sort of just my calm point in the day. And so similar to you, right? It was like, I'm just going to try it. This isn't loaded. We're just going to see what happens and what this is all about. And I was like, I can do 3 to 5 minutes. That's what I can start with. And now it's really a part of my everyday practice and I'm able to carve out 10 minutes. It's no more than that. That's just what I can do. And like you said, it became habit because my brain saw it as valuable. I was able to have some space and distance between sort of thoughts and the reactivity. And I had that felt experience of, oh, this is helpful. This is supporting me. It's grounding me. It's giving me some distance. It's helping me wake up sooner so that I don't like snowball into triggering thoughts or sensations. And like that kind of just, reinforced itself. When stuff feels good, right, our brain releases dopamine. And so when something feels good and is conducive to us and it releases dopamine, it's helping reinforce that habit, which is great.
Yeah. Well, and here's, what you just said that made me think of is like neuroplasticity can also be fuckery, because if you do something repetitively that harms you,
it'll entrench it. I've struggled with OCD. So very much like it's like the dark side of neuroplasticity, right? Like is like if I've struggled with, obsessions and compulsions and I would get really caught in them, it's like neuroplasticity is like, we're rutted now. We're rutted in this for a little bit. And it's like, whew, yeah, that neuroplasticity happens fast.
Yeah. So the moral of this story is it goes one or two ways: toxic neuroplasticity or very helpful and leads to vitality and magical change. So I think it's like being keenly aware of like really assessing, how does this habit serve me? Does it enhance my life? Does it create vitality? Does it allow me to live by my values and be the person I want to be in this world? Or does this habit pull me away from my values, make me stuck in dysfunction, create interference in a way that's like harming me? And then it's that really valuable pause that goes, if it's not helping me, then I need to rewire my brain. Yeah, fuck.
Damn it. Yeah, it's like, oh, damn it. Sometimes I would get to that place with compulsions, like, damn it, now it's just exhausting and it's not even working anymore. It's not even bringing me like relief, or, it's only 2 seconds and gosh darn it, now all right, it's like that kind of moment of awareness.
Yes. I also have OCD, so I have a lot of empathy for what you're saying, and how, God, deeply grooved those neural pathways are when it comes to compulsions. And even though you think it's going to make you feel better, it actually just makes OCD way worse. So yeah, no, I think it's got lightness and darkness, this evolutionary process that our brains hold. But, it can really be for good. So we're all about tangible tools, as you know. If you had to give 3 tools to help someone begin forming a new habit or encourage the magic of neuroplasticity, where does someone start?
Yeah, I think we touched on it a little bit, but start small, really. Like, don't overreach. Make it so that it is easy to incorporate, right? Like if you're wanting to incorporate whatever it is, I mean, this can even be a new skill. Like I just started karate, you know what I mean? Like it could just be anything, right? Like whether it's, moving through anxiety or general wellness or a new skill, new hobby, like whatever it is, I think starting small, making it attainable, because a lot of us are overtaxed, right? Like a lot of us kind of teeter that line of burnout. So we don't need more responsibilities. We don't need more on our list, right? Like we probably need less on our list. So we don't need it to be big or overwhelming, right? To see change. So start small, smaller than you think. Like I think, the Japanese practice is onto something, even if it's a minute, whatever. Start smaller than you think. And I think also bringing that attitude of curiosity and compassion. So curiosity is really going to serve us. Studies say that it really helps with resiliency, especially in what feels like the face of like a setback or a barrier or stuckness. So, that voice is going to chime in like, damn it, you messed up. And when that voice like kind of yells at me, I'm like, you know what? My hand goes on my chest. I'm like, I am trying my hardest. And, maybe I wish that didn't happen. I wish I didn't do that. But what can I take away from this? What can I learn? Right. And that'll help us stay the course instead of getting discouraged, because that's what so much of us do. We get discouraged and we kind of throw our arms up and we're like, forget it. Right. Like I remember learning to ride a bike and my dad was teaching. I was overwhelmed. I threw my bike and I'm like, I'm done. Like we get discouraged. So yeah, start small, curiosity and compassion for when, again, we inevitably feel like we're not quote unquote perfect as a recovering perfectionist. And let's see, what would be a third? I'm trying to think of a third.
I know I can be collaborative too.
Drawing on experiences, I think, is helpful. Like for me, if I'm stuck in a compulsion, I think about like, oh my God, that was not even a thing, right? Like a week ago, it wasn't even a thing. So like, as quickly as I got entrenched into it, so too can I get untrenched, if that's even a word. But like kind of drawing on past experiences where something we're really proud of that did become habit and we were kind of surprised and proud, and we can kind of feel that in our bones, like the felt experience, and seeing how hardships have shifted too, because we all have that sort of bias where when we're in the middle of a hardship, it really looks never ending and can look all consuming. So,
and I'll add to what you said. So bonus tip number 4 is celebrate the wins.
Absolutely.
Like stop and smell the roses. Like when you do something 3 times out of the week, hell yeah, like do a celebration, do a happy dance, treat yourself, like whatever it is, just relish, acknowledge it, because we get so caught up in outcome, the next thing. And I think part of habit changing and neuroplasticity is really stopping and celebrating and being so grateful that you did something new and so appreciative that your brain allowed you to show up differently in a moment.
Yeah, which is, again, no easy feat, right? Like we are automated, habitual creatures. It's challenging when we go against the grain, and, really, like even 2 out of 5 is great. Even something that is a little different, a little novel is worth acknowledging. I mean, it's hard to do new stuff.
It is. Well, thank you, Kelli, from the bottom of my heart for joining me, for talking about a topic that impacts literally every human on this planet, because we all have brains and we're all trying to do new shit and try new things. And we hope that these tips help you develop new skills, new practices, and really having neuroplasticity be an ally, like in the process of making changes. And again, we missed Victoria deeply. You will get to meet her when we are on your show. But thank you. So we'll all catch everyone later.